What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into episode number 648 of Underground Sports Philadelphia, presented by the City of Vineland. It's KB coming at you. We got an awesome show lined up for you today. The Fightin' Phils get back on track, win a series at home. I told you on the last episode they needed some home cooking. They do just that and take 2 out of 3 from the San Diego Padres. We have a guest on this week's episode. We have Philadelphia Waterdogs beat writer Wyatt Miller joining me for the Wyatt Miller Power Hour. Gave us an incredible amount of time. He and I talked about the Philadelphia Waterdogs, their slow start to the season, what they can do to fix things. Is the face-off position a true issue for them, or are there some more underlying issues that have resulted in this 0-3 start? Plus, the local radio station continues to slander and bash the Philadelphia Eagles, and I just am so sick of it, and we need to start some sort of boycott or a block parade on WIP, because that is going to be the last time I say their call letters on this show. They are the local radio station. But before we get into all of the good stuff, make sure you guys are following us on the socials at UndergroundPHI, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook.com/UndergroundSportsPHI, Twitch.tv/UndergroundSportsPHI. You can follow me on Twitter at KBIZZL311. You can follow me on Instagram and Threads at KBIZZLE11. Subscribe to the podcast feed, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts in audio form, but those two in particular really help us because we get those direct analytics. Keep subscribing. Leave those 5-star ratings and reviews wherever you get your podcasts. Be a friend, tell a friend. And, of course, subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@UndergroundSportsPhiladelphia. That is where you get full video episodes of this show every single week, full video episodes of every show on our network, clips, shorts, live streams, original video content. It is all on the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@UndergroundSportsPhiladelphia. Smash that like button, ring the bell icon, leave a comment down below, your thoughts on everything we discuss on the show, and if you want me to bring Wyatt Miller back on throughout this PLL season and beyond, because Wyatt's the best, and why wouldn't you? You guys already know this show is presented by our hometown, the City of Vineland, and the City of Vineland Municipal Calendar features city-organized, city-sponsored, and city-affiliated events that are of public interest. The calendar, which is accessible at vinelandcity.org, is a good way for residents and visitors to build awareness, remain engaged with city government, and participate in local events. You can also follow the City of Vineland on social media via their Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube pages. And through these tools, you can stay connected to the community and get important announcements about programs and services offered by the city. Vineland, New Jersey, where it's always growing season. And, of course, big thank you to Security 21 Security Systems and Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated for their continued support of this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the Fightin' Phils have won another series. They are #back after a long, grueling, tumultuous road trip. The Fightin' Phils are back in the win column, back in the series winning column, and it is brought to you by our awesome merch partners at PHI Apparel Company. You guys want to stand out in the crowd all summer long when you're tailgating, going to Citizens Bank Park. There's no better way to do so than with our awesome merch partners at PHI Apparel Company. Rep the Fightin' Phils with unique designs for everybody. Men's, women's, kids, everybody can rep PHI Apparel Company. You can also get Underground Sports Philadelphia podcast merch for all of your favorite podcasts on the network. If you want to stand out in the crowd, go to phiapparel.co and use code UNDERGROUND at checkout. You'll get 10% off your merch order. It is the most effective and direct way to support everything we're doing here at Underground Sports Philadelphia. When you get your merch, tag us in a post when you're wearing it. When you get it, we'll repost it everywhere. PHI Apparel Company will repost it. That's phiapparel.co. code underground for 10% off your merch order so you can stand out in the crowd all summer long. The Phils take 2 out of 3 from the San Diego Padres. They squeak one out on Tuesday after bludgeoning them on Monday in a 9-2 victory. Tuesday they win 4-3, courtesy of a nice little ninth inning walk-off win for the Fightins. And then they drop the game on Wednesday. Just realized I had the wrong date up there in the corner, so my apologies. But they dropped the game today, so I'm recording this on Wednesday. 5-2 to the Padres. It's fine. You win some, you lose some, but they take the series and the season series from the San Diego Padres. 5-1, win the series here, 2 out of 3. And they're back in the win column, and that's what matters. They do the damn thing. And, weird start for Ranger Suarez where the Phil's offense just didn't come to life for him. But I think the coolest part about that game today was that Ranger Suarez's wife and kids were able to watch him pitch for the very first time in his career. And that's something that's so special that I don't think we as fans really think about with a lot of the Hispanic players on this team, where the Phillies signed them when they're so young. Like Ranger Suarez. They traded for Christopher Sanchez when he was younger. Somebody like Jose Alvarado, who we traded for, and we found out last postseason that, his family was coming here for the first time. It's something that we aren't too privy to, and I think a lot of us before today didn't realize that Ranger was married, that Ranger had kids, and to finally see your husband, your father, pitch and perform at his craft at the highest level that he has been working his entire life for in person for the very first time had to have been such a cool feeling and surreal feeling and just a filled with emotions type of moment for Ranger Suarez's wife. It's something that I'm sure his 2 children will look back at, when they're a little bit older and be like, wow, I got to watch dad pitch, on this day. And Ranger delivered. Ranger did not have a bad start whatsoever. Went 6 innings, only gave up 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts, no walks. He did his part of the job. It just wasn't enough from the Phillies offense. But I think it was such a cool moment, and man, oh man, is Ranger Suarez's son just a mini version of Ranger. It was really cool, and somebody like myself who has been a huge Ranger Suarez fan for as long as I can remember, probably dating back to, I don't even know when, pretty close to around the time that the Phillies signed him as an international free agent at such a young age. In 2012, I probably stumbled upon Ranger in 2014, 2015. And, now he is one of the most dominant pitchers in Major League Baseball. He's the Cy Young favorite in the National League. And people are starting to fall more and more in love with Ranger Suarez. And it's just such a cool thing to watch as his career's developed. He's still only 28 years old. And it was just such a cool moment to see the stories and the moments from today's game when everyone found out that Ranger's wife and kids were at Citizens Bank Park, and they're here throughout the rest of the season, which I think is beautiful and amazing for Ranger. And I think it's only going to motivate him more. And I know Alex Coffey put out a great article with Philly Voice and pretty much detailed it, they're going to go to as many games as possible the rest of the year, which I think is going to be so cool. And I love that for Ranger. I love that for his family. I'm sorry, not Philly Voice. Alex used to work. She's at the Inquirer, not Philly Voice. But I think it's so cool for Ranger, and hopefully, Ranger's wife gets to be in the mix with all the Phillies' wives and girlfriends now, and Rangers kids get to meet all the Phillies players' kids and be in the mix with them. I think that'd be so cool to just, add another member to this Phillies family. And I think that's the coolest part about the Phillies as an organization is they are so family-oriented from top to the bottom, from John Middleton all the way down to, a concession stand worker. It is such a tight-knit organization and family-oriented organization, and it's really cool to see Ranger Suarez's entire family now, his wife, his children, be here for him during a season that he has been absolutely spectacular. And, that's one of the coolest little sub-stories of this season so far is Ranger's family coming to the States. So very happy for Ranger, very happy for his family, and, hoping this only continues the summer of Ranger, if you will. But yeah, the Phils, they get back on track, and I said it on the last episode, guys, when the Orioles series was over, they just needed to come home. They needed to get that home cook and sleep in their own beds, come back to Citizens Bank Park, be in front of that home crowd, and you see what happens. They win a series. They look good. They look like themselves again, winning games in comeback fashion, scoring runs, pitching well. It takes a toll on you when you're on the road that much. So, I mean, I'm very happy with where this team is right now. They're on the cusp of 50 wins, which is great. And, hopefully it comes sooner rather than later during this Diamondback series would be great. That's upcoming, which I'll be at 2 out of 3 of. Cole Hamels' retirement night on Friday, and then I'll be at the Father's Day game with OG on Sunday. That's Sunday morning baseball. But yeah, I mean, I have no gripes, no complaints, and the Phillies are still the best team in the National League. You shouldn't be overly concerned. We just got to gear up for that trade deadline to really kick in, and I'm excited for it. And like I mentioned, either last episode or a couple episodes ago, we're planning to do a trade deadline show live on our YouTube channel this year. I think that's going to be a lot of fun because I think the Phillies are going to make some big-time moves. So definitely looking forward to that. And we're working on some other fun projects in the mix. So Fightin' Phils are back on track, and hopefully they do some damage when I'm in the building for the first time in like a month. It's crazy. I haven't been to Citizens Bank Park since May 19th, but I'll be there twice over the weekend and get my fix in. I need it. I need it hooked to my veins. I need that Citizens Bank Park energy ready to rock and roll. So yeah, the Phils are back, and I think without any further ado, we're going to kick it to our incredible conversation with Philadelphia Waterdogs beat writer Wyatt Miller. Get you guys more in the mix with Wyatt. You should be following him if you want some of the best coverage of the Philadelphia Waterdogs directly. Obviously, we cover them here. We cover them on OTB, but Wyatt is talking to the players every single week. He's talking to Coach Tierney every single week, giving great insight, great stories on this team. And it's definitely a conversation that I hope you guys enjoy. I hope it gets you more stoked and geared up for the Waterdogs even after their slow start. And I think, the conversation Wyatt and I had really breaks down the true reasoning behind this 0-3 start and gives you a little insight on just our Waterdogs knowledge as a whole. And I really hope you guys embrace this team like I've been saying since they became our own. And, hopefully an 0-3 start hasn't detracted you too much from the Waterdogs being Philadelphia's team. But before we get to Wyatt, I do want to mention a couple of our awesome partners. First things first, our friends over at FOCO. Guys, they're the best in the forever collectibles game. FOCO, you guys have seen me wearing the overalls. I got to get the short talls ASAP. FOCO, if you're listening, please hook your boy up. They keep laughing at me when I comment on the bobblehead post. Send your boy a bobblehead. Hit my line. FOCO, the leading distributor in officially licensed forever collectibles from Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, WWE, college basketball, college football, you name it, they've got it. Click the link in the description. Check out everything FOCO has to offer. When you guys click that link and purchase something, it really does go a long way for helping us out. It helps FOCO recognize that you guys are buying things from us and allows us to continue to grow and nurture this partnership with them that we want to take to the moon. So click that link, check out everything FOCO has to offer, and upgrade your Forever Collectibles game today. And shout out to FOCO for sponsoring the podcast. Also want to talk to you guys about the Outside the Box podcast PLL app code. That's right. The PLL app is your number one way to stay up to date with the Philadelphia Waterdogs and the PLL as a whole. You get press conferences that myself, DJ, Chase, and Hoots, all of our team from OTB, are a part of. You get awesome stories from our guy Wyatt Miller on the Waterdogs and every team in the league. You get highlights. You get everything you could possibly imagine, and it's a gamified app, guys. So every day when you log in, you get experience points. You get experience points for playing PLL Fantasy. You can join the Outside the Box podcast fantasy group. You can also check out all of the daily tasks that every single day there's a new one, builds up. You get weekly experience points there. It's a really awesome way to keep yourself integrated with the Premier Lacrosse League. And we have an app code for you guys. So when you download the PLL app in the App Store, Google Play Store, or go to PLL.app, go to the redeem code section and type in OTBPOD. That's OTBPOD in the redeem code section. You'll get 500 XP on your PLL app account. It is truly a lifesaver of an app, and there's an integrated chat feature in there that you can keep up to date with everything going on with the league, with fans across the country, across the world, and stay up to date with our Philadelphia Waterdogs. So download the PLL app in the App Store, Google Play Store, or go to PLL.app, and when you go to the redeem code section in the app, type in OTBPOD for 500 XP in the PLL app on your account. And now, without any further ado, let's kick it to myself and Wyatt Miller. All right, everybody, it's about time we do this now that they are Philadelphia's team, and you guys know I'm one of the co-hosts of the Outside the Box podcast on the Underground Sports Philadelphia Podcast Network. So it is probably a long time overdue to introduce you guys to some of our Philadelphia Waterdogs companions that we get to interact with on a week in and week out basis. And it is Philadelphia Waterdogs beat writer Wyatt Miller. Wyatt, welcome to Underground Sports Philadelphia. I know you've been on Outside the Box in the past, but welcome to the flagship show, and we're happy to have you, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm pumped to be on and ready to talk some Waterdogs lacrosse.
It has not been the most ideal start in the Philadelphia Waterdogs era for this team. Obviously, they lose the championship of the Champ Series in overtime, and now an 0-3 start to this 2024 regular season. 2 games in overtime on their homecoming weekend. You and I have been talking the past couple of days about just like what is going on with this team. And yesterday we get a nice spark of bright news, and that is Jack Hanna is back. And if you don't know Jack Hanna in the lacrosse world, Philadelphia is going to find out really soon. He's one of the most lethal, creative, and fun players to watch in any format of lacrosse. And we get to call him ours as a member of the Philadelphia Waterdogs. But I think this is like a shot in the arm that this team needs after an 0-3 start. And if it was on the flip side of things, I think you and I would both be saying, wow, you know, this Waterdogs team is 3-0 and they're getting Jack Hanna back. It's like, what can't they do? Now that they're 0-3 and they're getting Jack Hanna back, it does feel like their offense is going to gain a new dimension and kind of unlock some things that have been plaguing them to start this early season.
Absolutely. And I think we even saw a little bit of that last year when he came back mid-season and just immediately went off against, I think it was the Whipsnakes. And he's just so creative off the dodge. He's one of the best shot creators in the PLL. And when he's healthy, like you said, it's a different Waterdogs offense because he can kind of bring them out of you know, that stagnation period or you know, the slow start that has sometimes you know, kind of dragged the Waterdogs down at times. But he is one of those guys that, you know, has a connection with Tierney, first of all, having played with him at Denver. And Tierney knows how to unlock him and to use him to the best of his abilities. And his competitive nature is something that's always come up in talking with him and with Tierney and with Cope. And he's just one of those guys that hates to lose more than anything. Like, he is just such a competitor, and he is so good at, not really caring, I can shoot however many times. I'm going to be a volume shooter. I'm going to get one in eventually, and it's going to take us to the next level. And I think his offensive acumen and what he provides is almost unique from the midfield position in the PLL. I think that he's such a talented player, and having him back is certainly going to, jumpstart this Waterdogs offense, so to speak.
He does kind of remind, we were talking before we started recording about, just Philly guys and Philly athletes. Like, Jack Hanna kind of does give off that Bryce Harper feel to this team.
Yeah,
where, like you said, he doesn't like to lose whatsoever. He's going to do whatever it takes to win, and he can be that shot in the arm for a team that desperately needs it. And you want to talk about the long ball, Jack Hanna can unlock that 2-point threat for the Waterdogs that has been absolutely invisible to start this year. They're the only team that has not scored a 2-point goal this season in the PLL. I think adding that dimension to their offense is only going to help, because in their 3 losses, they've lost because of the 2-pointer.
Yep, exactly. And something that I find super interesting is that to start the season, like 2-point shots, they were 3rd in the league last year and made 2s. They haven't made a single one. They're the only team to not make one. And they've also shot the least amount, even less than the Redwoods, who've only played 2 games. And that to me is kind of shocking, because they have lived and died on that, and so far this season they've pretty much only died on it. They have not been able to live on that 2-point shot, and obviously Jack Hanna is going to be a huge part of that attack, because he is just so he has such a creative way of getting open, especially from long range. But guys like Connor Kelly, and Jake Caraway, who are some of the best 2-point shooters in the league, just haven't really been able to get in that rhythm yet. And I think Caraway is a guy that I'm definitely looking at to be more aggressive. I think that when he's on the field, he's been good, and he's been, definitely showing signs of willingness to let it rip. But at the same time, he hasn't really gotten that many opportunities. He had one on a power play, and I think he only has one more since then. He didn't even have any coming into this weekend. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jack Hanna kind of opens up that offense, especially from 2-point range. But the 2-pointer has been definitely something surprising for this team so far, especially because, Tierney talked, before the season, he talked to a bunch of people in the league trying to figure out, what's important that I may not know, what's significant that I'm going to have to adjust to. And he talked about people saying how important it was to not just shoot the 2 and make the 2, but defend the 2. And, he acknowledged in that past game, the games they've lost, they've all lost to a 2-pointer, because they've let one in, and it's been a 1-goal game. So it's going to be interesting to see how that, how this 2-week break kind of, sets this Waterdogs team up to approach things a little differently, especially in that aspect of the game.
And I do find it interesting because the Redwoods head coach and GM Nat St. Laurent brought it up in their post-game press conference, saying that, the Redwoods had a bye week 1. They play week 2. They play week 3, and now there's a league, bye week. So there hasn't really been an acumen for them to kind of find a rhythm yet. And it kind of feels a similar way for the Waterdogs in a sense. Sure, they played 2 games this past weekend and 1 more game than the Redwoods, but they played, opening weekend, then a bye. Then they have their homecoming weekend with 2 games back to back, and now a bye. Those 2 teams in particular, it feels like they really haven't been able to get going. You could probably say the same thing about the Denver Outlaws. Like, what an unfortunate circumstance where they have that amazing comeback win in Carolina, and then they're off for 2 weeks before they play again. Like, those 3 teams in particular, it does kind of suck for them in a sense where, like, they don't get that, constant rhythm that we've seen from some of the other teams in the league to start the year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a bit of a momentum killer. Like we've seen with the Atlas, they have just been building on everything. Like, they have looked so impressive from the jump, but every week it seems like they've added a little bit more to their game and to their success that, like you said, it's just not really a possibility for those teams who have kind of, been a little bit less fluid because of the schedule. And that's not necessarily something they can control, but it is something that they're aware of and that they're going to have to figure out. And so it'll be interesting to see how, they kind of get back into the rhythm of things, especially the Outlaws. I think that was such an interesting thing to happen, where they have this, franchise altering moment with their, with their guy. And then it's like, all right, now you got to wait. Like it's going to be so fun to watch that play out and to see how these bye weeks kind of influence the teams going forward this year. Cause obviously it's a new thing for the league. And so, there's a lot of moving parts, especially with the Waterdogs that are new. And at the same time, there's a lot of things that are exactly the same. Like, a lot of the roster, pretty much the entire starting lineup is returning. And so there's definitely some interesting dynamics at play here with, things that are different and things that are the same. And it's going to be great to see how that all unfolds this year.
And, you bring up most of this team returning, and they've been together pretty much as a unit since 2022, this current iteration that won a championship. Michael Sowers brought up after starting 0-3. But, there's been that injection of quote unquote the best draft ever into every team. And, this year for the Waterdogs, I think has been interesting to kind of see some of these guys find their footing and find their way onto this roster. We've seen, if I'm not mistaken, just two of the rookies so far. Matt Brandow, obviously their number 1 overall pick that they got number 7 in the draft, that kind of fell in their laps. And then this past weekend, we get Marcus Hudgens, who I think has been their best rookie debut this season. And that's no slight to Matt Brandow, but to see a 3rd-round pick in Marcus Hudgens, who kind of bounced around the college scene a little bit, played at a number of schools, and comes in as a 3rd-round pick to a defense that's absolutely loaded top to bottom, steps in for an injured Chris Sabia, and shows out on the biggest stage in a back-to-back weekend for his first pro games.
Yeah, I was so impressed with Marcus Hudgens this weekend. And I know you and I talked about that a little bit, but he looked like a pro. He looked like he wasn't overmatched. He wasn't outmatched by any of those guys. He was staying with everybody. Tierney mentioned in postgame, he was fantastic. He as a rookie, to only want 1 or 2 plays back after a game, like you'll take that every time, especially when he's filling in for somebody as important as Sabia has been to this defense the last couple of years. Like, he was taking the ex-attackman in the playoffs last year, and he was doing all this really significant stuff that is not easy to replace, especially in a group that's as tight-knit as this one. And Hudgens just looked fantastic. He was throwing checks at the right time. He wasn't letting anybody get a step on him. He had one goal where, the screen gets TJ Malone open and he gets past him. And that was pretty much the only thing that I saw that was, not great from him. I think that he was fantastic. He was a ground ball machine. He was scooping up everything. He was leading the transition. I was just so impressed with how he was just composed and just so easy to fit into this defense. It was really impressive to see that this weekend for sure.
He looked like he had played with the likes of Ben Randall and Eli Gobrecht and Liam Burns for years. And to know that those were his first 2 pro games is like crazy. And you could have fooled anybody by saying that. The Waterdogs made a couple moves this week as well. Seems like Chris Sabia should be back. I know Coach Tierney brought that up to you, and I don't know if he mentioned it in the press conference or not after the games, but Chris Sabia coming back just makes this defense that much deeper. And obviously the number 1 talking point on this team has been the face-off.
Yes.
The whole diatribe around the position over the past couple years has been interesting. We've kind of been talking on the show. We've talked in the press box. You and I have been talking as well. It's not necessarily the number 1 problem, but it certainly could be a problem if things continue to spiral the way that they are. I know they brought it up on the Mitchell Pelkey lacrosse show on TLN. Shout out to those boys. Should the Waterdogs sign Connor Farrell? It doesn't feel like Coach Tierney is going to bring in anyone except for Alex Stathakis, who is his guy. When we see Alex Stathakis, who knows? I personally would like to see it sooner rather than later, simply to allow Zach Currier to be what we saw him against the Whip Snakes on a more consistent basis. Because when you let Zach Currier be Zach Currier, he is in the conversation as the best lacrosse player on the planet.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And I think, Tierney told me that other coaches told him that when he was talking to people in the preseason, like he was, Courier, with all that he does defensively and offensively, is one of the most valuable players in the league, if not the most valuable. And I think it's just so hard to replace that, even in the aggregate, with, you know, other people who do those things well, because he does everything well. You know, like, he's an impact defender. You know, even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, you know, like, he's pushing guys to the side and you know, so hard that they're dropping the ball, and then Dylan Ward's picking it up, and it's just special to watch him do what he does. And like Tierney said, he can do whatever they ask him to do, but what he's best at is, you know, being an impact player on offense, drawing people in, you know, being deceptive. He is so good at that. And going back to the face-off, I agree. I think that Stathakis is the guy that they're going to bring in if they're going to bring a guy in. I don't think that that's really up for, you know, debate at this point. I think that Tierney believes in him. He has a history with him, and he knows that he can trust him to follow their game plan and follow their strategy with this short clock. And I think that he really does believe in that strategy, and he stated that multiple times. And it's an interesting one to kind of dissect with no long polls, because last year Eli Gobrich was able to kind of cause more chaos and at less and have it impact him less on the defensive side of the ball, because he's not, you know, a two-way player, and he's not, you know, like an offensive starter. So I think that was just kind of made more sense from, you know, like a personnel standpoint, to be able to do that and to, you know, get him back on defense and then just have it be the way it is. But Courier, he's such an important part of this offense. Like you said, we saw how impactful he was, not just scoring, but, you know, being a facilitator and being a weapon and drawing slides. And he was doing a little bit of everything on the offensive end. And, you know, as much as, you know, everyone knows that he is that guy, it's different to see it in that sense after he had done the faceoff for those 2 weeks, for those 2 games. And so it was just so, you know, it seemed eye-opening to me to see him do that, and to see him just command that side of the field with such ease. And, you know, when the Waterdogs needed a goal, he was the guy, and Suarez was the guy. And that's, you know, he's going to be the guy in the midfield. Like, there are so many different pieces that are fantastic. You know, I talked about how deep this midfield is before the season even started. And obviously injuries have changed that a little bit. And there has been, you know, some stuff here and there that has made it not as impactful as that unit can be, but it's definitely one of the top units in the league. And Courier is, you know, the linchpin of that. And so, you know, you have your deep threat guys like, you know, Caraway and CK, and then you have, you know, your shifty Dodgers like Jack Hanna, who can also shoot the 2. And then you have Ryan Conrad, who can play both ways. But Courier is really the guy in that midfield. And I think letting him be himself is more valuable than having another person on the roster instead of a faceoff guy. Because when you really think about it, how much of one of your best players are you losing to have him face off? And at that point, would you rather have, you know, 75% of Zach Courier back, or would you rather have 100% of someone else off the roster? And I'd probably take 75% of Zach Courier almost every single time, because of just how impactful he can be on a game. Like, he can take over on both sides, and it's just so valuable to have that type of person. And when you're talking about 19 people on the roster, the Waterdogs have, you know, I guess 23 now that can be impact players and can be starters in this league. Sacrificing one of the best ones is a tough call to make. And I think this weekend was kind of an eye opener for a lot of people. I don't know if it was for Tierney, but I definitely think that it's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out and have to dive deep on in these 2 weeks.
Yeah, because I think the quote that stood out to me was after the Whipsnakes game, and I bring up to Jim Stagnita, like, Joe Nardella gets a perfect game against the Waterdogs, 31 for 31. It's the 4th perfect game in PLL history. 3 of them have come via the Whipsnakes. 2 were from Petey LaSalle last season, the other being TD Ireland against the Boston Cannons last year. But, you know, Stag says at the end of a game, you know, late in a game, you're going to overtime, you want a Joe Nardella to get you the ball and get you those possessions. And I think that's where, you know, the public surface level outcry about the faceoff position for the Waterdogs is there. But I think when you truly sit down and break it down, I think the frustration from Waterdogs fans and just people who like the sport, and our guy Jerry Raganese, who is championing the face-off every chance he gets, rightfully so. The frustration, I think, is those late game possessions where you're essentially forfeiting a possession that we saw against the Cannons. Zach Tucci was able to launch a 35, 40-yard two-bomb past Dylan Ward to flip the script of that game on its head. Instead of going into halftime down 1, you're down 3, and it changed the entire dynamic of that game moving forward. And sure, you got it to overtime, but you don't let up that 2-pointer. You're not talking about overtime. You're talking about you won in regulation. So I think that's where it comes into play with the frustration, is that late in the game, the Waterdogs so far have not had anybody to truly give them a legitimate chance at the end of the game to win. And it's because they don't have somebody who can get them that possession at the faceoff stripe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, the problem has been a little bit overblown because of that. Because, if they're not in those close games, then that's not going to be the storyline that it is. Because realistically, there are a lot of other things that made those games close, and the faceoff wasn't a primary one of them. I mean, watching those games as closely as I have, revisiting some of those plays, like there have only been a couple of really important possessions off the faceoff that have made an impact, but there's a million other things that have, made it get to that point. Like, Tierney talked about it after that game, how the offensive acumen has been a little bit lacking, just as an example, Kieran had that potential game winner on the doorstep and gets turned away by Krebs. It's a great play by Krebs. No shade there, but it was just, it's been kind of a consistent theme where the Waterdogs just haven't really been executing to the level that they're used to. Their shot percentage would be their worst. I think it's 26.5%, would be the worst since 2020, which was their first season as an expansion team. And that, that combined with 0-2s made is not a winning recipe, even with a defense that has been solid this year. I think the settled defense has been a lot better than people realize. I think in that last game, they gave up way too many fast break goals. That was a little bit shocking to me. I was kind of taken back by how susceptible they were to the transition from the whips. It was kind of crazy to see them just like go back after a turnover, after a messy save, whatever it was. They were just having so much success in transition, and it was kind of crazy to watch, especially with how good the Waterdogs midfielders can be on defense. I thought that was such a strange thing to see, and I think, I know going to training camp, that was a big thing that Tierney and Dylan Sheridan and Sweet Lou over there were talking about, was that transition defense and that transition offense needs to be, tight, and it needs to be a game changer, and it needs to be in their favor because, it's such a big part of the PLL and how fast the game is. So when you have that transition prowess, like the Waterdogs have in the past and have done specifically last year, they were fantastic in transition. And it was just interesting to see that not go their way and how much that affected the game and how they were even still able to be, right there in that game when that happened. So I really think that there's a lot at play here. Obviously the face-off, late in games is something that you can't deny, but these games are only close late because of so many other things. And I think, everyone's going to make a big deal out of the face-off, and everybody's going to, because it's a unique strategy. Nobody else is doing this in the league right now without the long poles. So it's going to be interesting to see how they adjust. And kind of going back to Alex Stathakis, I think that Tierney has a lot of faith in him, not just because he's played with him and he knows how he works, but because he has different approaches that he wasn't allowed to do in college that he can do in the pros, that people aren't really going to know what to expect from him. And I think that that's a really valuable commodity in a league where people play each other so often. The element of surprise is something that I think people are discounting a little bit. And I'm really excited to see if/when we do see Alex Stathakis on the field, what that looks like and how that kind of element of surprise factors into the game plan and to how people defend that. Because he's a big, strong guy. Like he is a 530 mile, like top deadlift in the weight room at Denver type of guy. Like he is a really serious athlete. And, you know, there are obviously a lot of guys out there who are experienced with the face-off and who have, you know, different things to offer. But I think Stathakis is definitely one of the guys that has a unique skill set and has a unique build. And, you know, he's like a semi truck. Like he's just so strong. And so he is going to be a difference maker if he's on the field. And I think the strategy, whether or not they, you know, do that soon, whether it's next week, whether it's 2 weeks before the playoffs, I think that at some point they're going to try it and they're going to have to see how that goes before it's one and done.
Before I bring up some of the Philly guys, this popped in my head, and it's something that would be interesting to pick the brains of Mike and Paul about. If this continues to go down the route that it does, do you think it implores the research? Has it been enough, you know, substance to say, hey, maybe we expand the game day roster? Maybe we open up another spot so that, you know, just like there's 2 goalies that are required to be on a game day roster, is there a spot that's opened up because every team needs to have a face-off guy?
That's a good point. And honestly, I hadn't really thought about it, but it's definitely something that I think they'd consider, especially if the Waterdogs continue to not dress one. Because, you know, when I was watching, you know, Trevor versus TD the other day, I was like, man, this is fun. You know, like it brings so much to the game to have that face-off battle, 2 of the best going at it. And it was just,
Weirman versus Sis in Carolina was a joy to watch. Even Sis versus Nick Rowlett was a ton of fun. And Nick Rowlett was like having one of his best games of his career against everybody's like prodigal son in Mike Sisselberger. And he's phenomenal at taking face-offs, but it's fun seeing those battles and how they can kind of, you know, play a factor into the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely one of the most fun parts of the game that, you know, the Waterdogs are kind of missing right now. And it's definitely, you know, the point is not to be a fun game. It's for the win. It's for the team to win. So, and Tierney knows that better than anybody. He's one of the most competitive people that has been around this sport, that has been around, you know, any sport. He is so meticulous and he is so driven to win. And I think, you know, he really does believe in this strategy, but I don't think he's not open to trying other things. And I think that he believes in Stathakis, and at some point we're going to see that. And as you know, as much fun as Connor Farrell is, he was really bad against the short clock last year. And the Waterdogs took advantage of that a lot. And I think that Stathakis is going to be the guy if there's a guy.
I did see, you know, circling back to the Mitchell Pelkey lacrosse show, I did see them bring up a good point where it wasn't that Connor Farrell had issues facing off in the short clock. He had issues against the poles being there. True. So that is another interesting point where if a team does want to, you know, bring Connor Farrell back into the fold, maybe you kind of see a different Connor Farrell at the stripe in the PLL. And hey, indoors, we just saw him, you know, turn around a season for the Bandits and they win a championship. So it is something to think about, you know, whether, you know, injuries happen in this league. If somebody does go down, that's something for a team to think about with Connor Farrell as well. We brought up, you know, the rookies being kind of just the newest guys on this team, but the Waterdogs did sign one guy in free agency. He's a Philly guy. How much of a godsend has Jake Richard been to this team? Obviously, Jake Higgins probably done for the year, as Coach Tierney mentioned on media day to start the year. What a like ray of sunshine signing for this team to bring in a guy who is from Philadelphia, wanted to play for his hometown team. And we brought it up when the signing happened on Outside the Box. Like, it's not every day that you get to go out in free agency and sign a guy who was a team captain on another franchise in any sport, let alone the PLL.
Oh yeah. I was surprised only because the Waterdogs had such immense short stick depth last year. But the more I thought about it, I was like, this is a perfect guy for the Waterdogs locker room and for their defense. You know, like he is so aggressive and he is so, just detailed about, his technique. Obviously, he has that rapport with Liam Burns from Marquette, doing a story about them coming up that I'm really excited about, just how that's, shaped their journey and how starting that program was so influential for them. And something Cope said to me last year is kind of encompasses what those guys bring. It's like they had to create that culture at that program and they did a great job. And now it's, where it is. And so, guys like Mason Woodward and all these dudes coming out of that program, that wouldn't necessarily be the case without those dudes. And they just created such an environment of acceptance and winning and, just doing everything, all the little things that you need to do. And Cope said that last year before the Richard signing, before, the offseason, he was just like, those guys are made of the right stuff and they do everything that they need to do. And they do everything that they're expected to do. And that's exactly what Jake Richard has done so far for this team. He's been, a vocal leader. He's been such a fantastic short stick and he's taken faceoffs. He's doing everything that's asked of him. And I think he's just such a, like you said, ray of sunshine. He is such an energy to this team. And it's such a valuable thing in the PLL to have multiple guys like that. And we all know the Waterdogs have some locker room champions in Mikey Schlosser and even more, underspoken guys like Kieran McArdle and Dylan Ward, like these veterans who, just have that presence and have that ability to impact the rest of the team without saying a word. Just how they go about their business is impactful. And I think, with the Waterdogs starting slow, like Michael Sowers said in the press conference after that third loss, you need those veterans to reassure everybody and to, be a calming presence. And I think Jake Richard is just totally the right person for that. And it's just another one of those guys that can be, the heart of this team. And I think there's so many of those that they're not going to get bogged down by this slow start. I think, like we've said, they're 3 plays away from being 3-0. And there's obviously, you can say that about a lot of different games and a lot of different teams throughout the years, but this Waterdogs team is so consistent in terms of personnel and they have such an experienced staff that it's hard to think that they won't bounce back from this just because they're right there. Even in 2022, those losses were not like this. Like some of them were not good. Some of them were not nail biters like these ones. So I think that it's definitely going to be interesting to see how they turn that around, especially because of the dynamic in the PLL where it's like, you're not together the whole week. You're not practicing every day. You're going about your business. So to have veterans like that who can impact the game in such a significant way, it is even more important in a league like this.
I think one of the more interesting under talked about moments of the off season, and obviously, you have a great relationship with him. I'm sure me and DJ have a great relationship with him. He is one of the best humans we know. Did you find it interesting that Kieran McArdle was the only kind of like key, anchor of this team that didn't get an extension this offseason?
Yeah, it was a little bit interesting. I was thinking about him retiring from the NLL. And I don't think that he's done or close to done by any means, because he is such a competitor. Like you want to talk about yes. Competitors. That dude hates to lose more than anything. Like the only thing he loves more than winning is his family. Like yes. Just genuinely, I believe that. And he is locked into this team and he is locked into this culture. And, the individual awards mean nothing to him. Like, him passing, all the guys are posting on Instagram. He's 8th in points. He couldn't care less. Like, I guarantee you he could not care less. And he is pissed about losing those 3 games. And he is pissed about not making that shot on the doorstep. And he is going to come out with a vengeance. And I think this 2-week break, I think he's going to go back. He's going to try and swallow this a little bit. He's going to spend some time with his family. And then he's just going to be an absolute menace. But I did find it interesting that he didn't get that extension. I don't necessarily think it's anything to be concerned about. I think that he loves this team, and he's talked extensively about how much the locker room means to him and how comfortable and how confident he is in these guys. I think honestly, it probably was mostly to do with his life and him trying to figure everything out. But it definitely was an interesting thing to me that so many people got extensions and he wasn't on that list. But, he is the captain of this team, and he is just one of the most competitive people alive right now. Like he is going to do everything he can to win. And I think that that's really where his focus is right now. And the extension will come when it comes, but he's definitely going to be spurred on by this 3 losses to start the year. This is not going to be the other teams in the league should be even more, not afraid, because nobody in this league is afraid, but it should be even more aware of how physical and how competitive he is going to be for the rest of the season, because he is pissed.
It does remind me kind of Rob Pennell last year when the Redwoods lost in the playoffs, and he kind of said the only jersey I will ever wear in the PLL moving forward is a Redwoods jersey. Kind of feels the same way for Kieran McArdle. Like, got, let go by the Atlas in the expansion draft, and the Waterdogs, gave him an opportunity to shine. And I think he, like you say, he hates losing more than anything. And I also think Kieran hates being disrespected more than anything. And so to have a franchise kind of like quit on him and let him go was kind of disrespectful to him. And he uses that as a chip on his shoulder all the time. He's a guy who was under recruited / not recruited at all going into college, and that's why he ends up at St. John's. And I think Kieran is one of the most underrated players we've ever seen in pro lacrosse history. And I think like he's the face of this Waterdogs team just as much as Michael Suarez is. And with those two, is there a nastier duo in the PLL, Wyatt, than Kieran McArdle and Michael Suarez running a 2-man game on the attack side of things more than anything? Like those two, I swear they share a brain.
Yeah, it's really tough to come up with one. The only one that, people always kind of talk about is Nolting and Holman. But I think, with Suarez and McArdle, it's just a little different with how they run that 2-man game. They, like you said, they just are always in sync. They know exactly what's expected of each other. And McArdle's always been that way. I did a story about him early last year, talking to his college coaches. Like he was just on another level. And he, let's be honest, he was born with a chip on his shoulder. He doesn't need anything to put that chip there. He was born with it. Like he's always been that kind of undervalued but overproducing guy who is just like invaluable to his teams. Like at St. John's, he said that he was so far, like his coaches said that he was so far ahead of the other guys on that team that if someone wasn't looking where they needed to look or where they needed to be, he would throw the ball off their helmet to tell them that they needed to be somewhere, or that they're not in the right place, or that they need to be looking at him to give them the ball. And it's just, that's the perfect analogy for what he is as a player, which is he leads by example. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do, he's going to tell you, and he's going to tell you by doing it. And that is just who he is. And I love watching him play because it's so obvious that he knows exactly what's expected of him. And he's always going to put his teammates in a position to succeed more so than himself. Because if at the end of the day, yeah, he's competitive and yeah, he has that chip on his shoulder, but it's all about the team and what he can do for them, not about, look at me, I'm undervalued. He knows that. And yes, it makes an impact, but at the end of the day, he would trade, he would trade his name and likeness and all of that for a championship every year. And that's what I love about Kieran McArdle.
Michael Suarez is obviously, the face of the team, being especially now that, the home cities are in place. He's a Philly guy. And I think it has been awesome to watch. And I think you can attest to this, having been around the team so closely the last 2 seasons now, just the transformation of young Michael Suarez into 26-year-old quote unquote grizzled veteran Michael Suarez, and seeing how composed and how much of a leader he's really turned into in such a short amount of time. And, obviously his first season, we were kind of robbed of, just the Michael Suarez experience. And then to just see how far he's come, not only on the field, but, you know, the way that he carries himself off the field. And not that there was any questions about that whatsoever, but he's really turned into just such a stoic leader on this team to go alongside the guys you mentioned, you know, Kieran, Jake Richard, Dylan Ward, and a whole bunch of other guys on this team, Liam Burns. It's really awesome to watch, you know, how everyone viewed Michael Suarez as like this kid, and he's now, you know, a big time leader and a huge part of what the PLL does, and a face of a franchise.
Absolutely. And I think his post-game press conference kind of perfectly encapsulates that, where he was talking about the vets not pressing the panic button. And now he's not pressing the panic button because he knows and he's matured. And, you know, being around guys like Kieran McArdle and Dylan Ward and all of those guys, that's what it does to you. You know, like you have that sense of confidence in those people around you because you've seen it before. You've been there now. And you know, obviously he had one of the best college careers ever, but it's different in the PLL because it's such a unique league with so much talent. And you know, it's a 10-game season. It's easy to be like, well, can we turn this around? It's like, you have turned it around. So yeah, now you can turn it around this time, especially with all these 1-goal games. And Michael's been a joy to cover and to talk to, and his family is just incredible. And there's such a Philly suburbs family. It's so awesome I talked with his dad and his 2 brothers. You know, he drives home every weekend to watch the Eagles games. You know, he's hitting up the group chat every weekend when he's coming back. Like, you know, it's always about family and community with him. And I think that transfers over to the field and to this team because he really cares about the people who he's with more so than what they're doing. And I wrote that in my piece because it's really just how he and how everybody else has explained Michael Suarez, because he is just so, you know, ingrained in the culture of his family, of his city, of his team, that he's going to do and be whatever they need of him. And right now what they need of him is to be that calming leader and to be that face who's also the, you know, the guy, the locker room presence. And he has really blossomed in that role. And it's really been awesome to see him be, you know, not just the Philly guy, but, you know, not necessarily a captain, but a leader. And I think that that's what's so special about this Waterdogs team is they have so many of those guys. So when you put all that together, it's just really special to watch and to see. And, you know, if I was 0-3 on my baseball team to start the year when I played, probably be a little bit pissed off and a little bit worried. And he's definitely pissed off, but I do not think he's worried. And that's definitely going to be something that's going to serve him well as someone who's going to be in this league for a long time.
What do you think has made it easy in terms of just the seamless transition it feels like? Because, you know, a team can change coaches and things can fall apart. A team can change coaches and things, you know, evolve into something that turns into a dynasty. Look at the Golden State Warriors. They go from Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr, and they evolve into this powerhouse that we talked about for almost an entire decade. What do you think has worked so well in the transition from Andy Copeland, who you and I personally had a phenomenal relationship with across the board? You know, a coach who helped win this team a championship, the first coach in this franchise's history, who a lot of these guys trusted because he took that shot on them in that initial expansion draft, brought them into the fold and said, hey, you know, we're going to have a chip on our shoulder and we're going to go out and we're going to play like that, to move on from a guy who cared so deeply about this roster and was such a pivotal reason why this Waterdogs team has become a perennial powerhouse in the PLL, to now coach Bill Tierney, who has never coached at the professional level. He's obviously a legend in the college game, a legend just in lacrosse in general, but things can be different. And Coach Tierney talked about that in Albany. Like, he learned so much about himself as a coach, he said, after 4 days of training camp than he has, you know, in his coaching career. But what do you think has made it so easy to go from somebody like Andy Copeland to Coach Bill Tierney now?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me tell you, there's a lot of things that have gone into that. But I want to start with Cope because he is just, you know, like you said, we've had fantastic relationships with him. He's a great man. He really is. He's a fantastic human being. And he actually called me personally to let me know that he was stepping down, which He didn't know me that. And I just, it really just goes to show how important he is as a human being, and what that sort of fuels in that team is just his genuine nature. Like, he really cares about everybody who he crosses paths with. And that is something that Tierney, although it's a different kind of method to the madness, that is something that is very much consistent. And one story that he told me during the preseason was he was trying to talk to every single player before training camp, and he was going to talk to them a couple of times, and he had gotten through everybody, but the only person he hadn't heard from yet was Jake Richard. And so he texted him back, and Jake immediately responded. He was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, coach. I just had a baby." and Tierney was like, "All right, this is real life now. Like, I gotta adjust my expectations and what is going on in these people's lives. Like, this isn't a bunch of college kids who I'm trying to teach them how to be men. These are men who have succeeded at that college level, and some of whom who have already succeeded at the pro level, most of them who have succeeded at the pro level." And so that was kind of like a significant moment for him, where he was like, man, I kind of have to, obviously he was already planning to treat this squad and these people differently, and it wasn't just going to be like it was in college. But I think that was kind of such a significant thing for him to be like, oh man, like, this is real life. Like, when I was that age, what was I doing? How was I thinking? That sort of thing. And, he's really taken that to heart, and he's really been genuine with everybody, me included. He's been super, just welcoming, and he really cares about these guys. And even in the pregame speech that they posted, he was just talking about, how everybody has life going on and how this is a part of their lives, and going out on that field is something that everybody cares about, and it's going to make a difference in their lives, how they play and how they perform. So let's do the best that we can to be there for each other on and off the field, and to be that consistently genuine. And I think that's something that, people think about Bill Tierney. They think about the tirades on the sidelines and him screaming at the refs, but that's not his nature. His deepest nature is really as a leader and as a caring person who is trying to get the best out of these young men. And I think now he's trying to do that with these, people who aren't as young, and he's really kind of adjusted his mindset in doing that. And I think that's the reason that it's been such an easy transition. And I think that originally I'm pretty confident that the Waterdogs weren't 100% sold on the hire before they talked to him. It was like a lot of them knew him as that guy, that guy who screams at the ref, that guy who has grueling, long practices, who expects a crazy amount of work from his players in college, as he did. And, there's a million stories about that, but there's just as many of him being a genuine person who is interested in furthering the lives of his players as people, and not just on the field. And I think that is something that Cope and Tierney have in common, more so than the average person would. And I don't have the relationship with other PLL coaches, but those two guys specifically, I've talked to a bunch, and they both have that, just such a genuine way about them. And it's really easy to respond to that and to feel welcomed by that. And I think that was kind of, once they all talked to him individually and then as a group, I think everybody was on board, because they realized that it was the same sort of thing, just a different method to get there.
Yeah, I felt the same way, because like we mentioned, like, we did Andy Copeland's first interview after getting hired. Take that part of my take. He called in, didn't have to do it, and was like, yeah, let's do it. And from there, like, our relationship was fantastic, to where, like, at the end of the day, we ended up doing his final non-ESPN interview as head coach and GM of the Waterdogs at Champ Series, which again is insane to think about. And like, when the Waterdogs won the championship in 2022, Andy Copeland like thanked DJ and I for like all the support and what we do to, help champion the Waterdogs, and, the credit that he gave us for helping grow the game and everything. It's like, you just won a championship. Like, you don't have to be thanking us about, helping, further the Waterdogs in the league and everything like that. But like you said, it just shows how great of a person he is. And I was nervous. Like, I was like, great, now I have to build a new relationship with a team that really likes our content and our
Yeah.
show. And it's like, how are we going to, break the ice here with somebody who, for me, I wasn't a college lacrosse guy whatsoever, before I started doing OTB. Like, I got in following the NLL, and then the PLL started that summer right after. So I kind of went in like reverse order almost of your traditional lacrosse fan.
Yeah.
But Bill Tierney is a name that if you're even around lacrosse for an iota of a second.
Yeah.
And I was nervous, but then you hear him say in that one press conference where he's like, I'm coming in here to a championship locker room, not trying to mess things up.
Yeah.
That to me was like, okay, he understands like what the task at hand is here, what this roster is capable of doing. And then along with that, after his press conference in Albany, after their game, he comes up to every single media member in that press conference, shakes our hands, says, thanks for being here, introduces himself formally. And I was like, okay, this guy like gets it and understands like what the role is now at the pro level for him. And I think, it's been an early go bump for the Waterdogs. And I think that in and of itself is almost a good thing for Coach Tierney to kind of learn that like it's not going to come easy. You have to earn, every single moment you get in this league. And that's a new challenge for him at this point of his coaching career and, his first go at coaching at the pro level. And it's going to be fascinating to watch him kind of navigate through that and figure out, what tires he's got to put on the car, to get through these bumps in the road.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how he comes back from this. And I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to be very adamant about, there's a certain way that he likes to do things, but that doesn't mean that he's not open to change when it's needed. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who are thinking the Waterdogs are in deep trouble right now. And, I don't think that's the case. I don't think Tierney thinks that's the case. I don't think any of the coaching staff or the team thinks that's the case. I think that there are a lot of things that they can be better at, but I don't think that their philosophy needs to change. I think that they have, like Michael Sauer said, they have a fantastic group of guys who knows exactly how to play together and what's expected of them. And Coach Tierney is, he put it all on himself, which is another thing I thought was really interesting from the post game. He said, the only thing that's different is me. So it's on me to figure out how to turn this around. And, obviously there's a lot of things in the league that are different. So it's not just him that's different, but for him to put that on his shoulders, I think was such a significant thing and really shows that, like you said, he gets it. He knows what to do to earn these guys' trust and respect. And even after, 3 1-goal losses, to put it on yourself and to be, responsible for that is something that's going to go a long way.
Wyatt, you're the best in the game. I do have to bring one last thing. How funny is it for you being a California guy and Jerome being a Philly guy, and you guys are covering teams on the opposite coasts?
It's pretty funny. It's definitely, the irony is not hard to find. But yeah, I grew up my whole life in LA. I'm here right now. Beautiful backyard. I ironically, my college roommate was a huge Philly sports fan. So I know a bunch about Philly sports, even though I'm not necessarily, the biggest Philly sports fan. I have a great respect for the culture and the fans and everything that goes into to that, being such an important part of the city and of the fan base. And I really, I've taken it in stride. It's definitely ironic and it's definitely funny to think about because I wasn't even expecting a California team necessarily.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a surprise. And I was like, that is kind of weird because like you said, Jerome's right there. So it's pretty funny, but I've definitely taken it in stride and I've enjoyed every second of it. And connecting with the Philly fan base. It's been great.
Wyatt, everybody should be following you for the best Waterdogs coverage. Your stories are fantastic. Your new piece about Michael Sauers and, kind of that leadership role he's taking as a grizzled vet now, in air quotes there, is fantastic. We'll link that in the description of this episode, but let everybody know where they can follow you, where they can read all your stuff, and obviously It's all accessible in the PLL app as well, which everybody should be downloading if they're a Waterdogs or just a PLL fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my Twitter is ymil07. So that's WYMIL07. Yeah, all my PLL content's on there pretty much. Really appreciate you having me on. Love talking Waterdogs. Love the pod. So anytime I'm available, you got it.
Yeah, we will definitely have you on more this season and moving forward, obviously, to talk Waterdogs and get everybody familiar in Philadelphia with our newest team. So appreciate it, and let's go Dogs.
Let's go Dogs. Appreciate you, Kyle. Thanks for having me on.
Shout out to Wyatt for hopping on and giving me such a gracious amount of time. He is truly the best. If you're not following Wyatt and everything he's doing, check out all of his stories in the PLL app or PremierLacrosseLeague.com and follow Wyatt on Twitter to stay up to date with everything Waterdogs from your Waterdogs beat writer. Last bit here, it is brought to you by our pals over at Kenwood Beer, the official beer partner of Underground Sports Philadelphia. It's a refreshing light lager, just 4.0% ABV, 120 calories, just 8 grams of carbs. Go to kenwoodbeer.com, guys. Check out everything on their website. They are truly the best. I'm sorry, 4.1% ABV, 120 calories, just 8 grams of carbs. Kenny is the best. They are slowly creeping down to Cumberland County. And you can find Kenwood Beer in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey. And if you're going to the Mann Center this summer for concerts, shows, podcasts, whatever it may be, they got the Tall Boy Kennys at the Mann Center. So go to kenwoodbeer.com, use the Kenny Finder to see who's got Kenwood Beer on tap in those markets, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey. And, of course, you can get it at your local liquor stores in those markets. Also, check out the Kenwood Beer shop. They've got great shirts, apparel. The Kenwood Beer pint glasses are pristine. They also got that Kenny beach towel, so you can crack open your Kennys on the beach. That's kenwoodbeer.com. Must be 21 or older to do so. And, of course, please drink responsibly. Guys, if you're still listening to that local radio station, especially the midday show, you're doing yourself a disservice. They are trying to pin the Philadelphia Eagles, their players, against the fans and just create controversy out of thin air that doesn't need to be created. They're doing it with the Phillies to a degree, not as much, but they're conjuring up these bullshit clickbaity topics when, number one, we've got a top team in baseball going on right now. Number two, the Philadelphia Eagles have not stepped on the field with this current iteration of the team ever. Ever. This current iteration has not stepped on the field together as a team ever. The Philadelphia Eagles in general have not touched a field since January. And we're creating controversy and just bullshit clickbait stories to drive narratives, to get these aggregate NFL accounts going and cooking. And for what? You're supposed to be the flagship station of the Philadelphia Eagles? I said on the last episode, if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I'm telling players to not go on that local radio station because it's not worth the time, the bullshit, and the false narrative spinning that the radio station is going to do to pin themselves, the fans, and players against one another and just create negativity for a season that doesn't start for another 3 months. I don't care about the preseason. Preseason does not matter in the NFL right now. It truly is a non-factor, especially for a team like the Eagles. The season does not start for another 3 months. We do not need to be going through an entire summer doing this bullshit song and dance and just creating negativity before a season even starts. And on top of that, the afternoon show, and Jack, I love you, but the hokey, gimmicky, shticky, dumb-ass, conjured-up, fabricated content that afternoon show is doing, and making Jack Fritz go and start Eagles chants at a Phillies game, which, by the way, the only game they lost in the series. Coincidence? And doing it in front of the radio booth and the media section so it gets picked up on hot mics is embarrassing. It's truly embarrassing. You're supposed to be the flagship station of the Phillies, too, by the way. Like, that was embarrassing to watch come across my timeline against my will. And I don't get why local media, I'm not talking about the people that are on the beat for the Phillies. Those people are truly the best, from Tim Kelly to Destiny Legardo to my guy John Foley, my homie Brooke Destra, and everybody that covers the Phillies, truly the best. But I don't get why the local radio station tries to pit the Phillies and the Eagles against each other and just try to drum up this dumb bullshit, sticky content, air quotes content, that does nothing but, again, feed into negativity, gets people pissed off at you, and I have no answers for it. I have no answers for it. It's dumb. You look like losers, and I genuinely just, like, if you're still listening to the radio at this point, like, unless there is some type of, like, A.J. Brown interview where he's blowing up their spot, you're just melting your brain by listening to them. There are so many other people out there creating content, covering teams, doing it in unique and interesting ways, that are independent creators, that are on podcast networks, that are former beat writers doing it now independently. Like, there's so many other ways to get your Philly sports content fix in 2024. And if you're still allowing yourself to be fed content from a station like that truly is just trying to breed negativity and breed just, like, unlistenable content and just make you not like them. Like I said, there's genuinely, like, two people that I fuck with from that station. It's James Seltzer and Jack Fritz. And sometimes I genuinely feel sorry that they have to go through the bullshit that they go through, because those two really 99% of the time are dishing out, content and thoughts that make sense and are not the radio bit. And they're doing it to drive in callers because the callers make the content for the hosts, and it allows them to do a third of the work because they just take a call. They allow people to call all day, every day now, and that creates the content for them. So if you're allowing, OG Wade to control your Philly sports narratives, and Butch from Manayunk and Chuck from Mount Airy, you're consuming Philly sports content incorrectly. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm sorry. And I'm not even trying to toot our own horns here. I think we do a damn fucking good job covering these teams without any type of credentials either for the major four sports, to a degree. But I think we do a damn good job here, and we bust our asses. So if you guys listen to us, we appreciate it. If you guys watch us, consume our content, follow us on the socials, we appreciate it. 125 billion% more than the people working over there, because they're a penny stock company who allow callers to create content for them. That's all I got for you guys. Once again, thanks to Wyatt Miller for hopping on the show this week. If you want more of Wyatt Miller, let me know in the YouTube comment section and follow us on the socials at Underground PHI across the board. Just search Underground Sports Philadelphia. You'll find us. You can follow me on Twitter at KBIZZL311 and KBIZZLE11 on Instagram and Threads. Subscribe to the podcast feed, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a 5-star rating and review. It really does go a long way for helping the show continue to grow. Subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Underground Sports Philadelphia. Let's get to 900 subscribers. Let's get to 1,000 subscribers. Let's keep it pushing. It's the summer of Underground. Smash that like button, ring the bell icon, leave a comment down below, your thoughts on everything I discussed on this episode. And you can subscribe to my personal YouTube channel. I believe it is at Underground KB or KB Underground. Which one is it? At Underground KB. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm working on some things there. We also have a pretty fun secret project potentially coming down the pipeline for the summer that you won't want to miss. So stay tuned for that. And get your merch from our awesome merch partners at phiapparel.co and use code Underground for 10% off your merch orders. Also coming up in the next week or so, we will be at OG Underground athlete Jamil Demby, his football camp on Friday, June 28th in Vineland. We will be there creating some incredible content with the boy that you won't want to miss, and we're working, plotting, scheming up to something season, if you will. Can't wait to be kicking it with Jamil at his 4th annual free football camp in the city of Vineland. And, of course, the show is presented by the city of Vineland, and whether you're a company looking to expand, relocate, or you're a new business startup, selecting the right location is critical to your success. Vineland, New Jersey offers both an affordable business location and an excellent quality of life. The city's economic development department is a one-stop source for moving your project through the development and approval process, and their goal is to make this process as smooth as possible and to provide the fastest turnaround times in the region. If you're considering potential locations for your operation, contact the Vineland Economic Development Team at 856-794-4100. That's 856-794-4100. Vineland, New Jersey, where it's always growing season. And big thank you to Security 21 Security Systems and Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated for their continued support of this podcast. This has been episode number 648 of Underground Sports Philadelphia, presented by the city of Vineland. I'm your boy KB. I'll see you at CBP this whole weekend, pretty much. So if you're around, come say what's up. But until next time, I'm getting the heck up out of here, and I'm signing off. Peace.